In this issue, we will discuss The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, a French writer who worked for an airmail company as an aviator and disappeared during a reconnaissance mission flight in World War II. This work, which takes the form of children's literature with nearly 50 illustrations by the author himself, offers a new guideline for adults who have lost their childhood spirit and reflects a criticism of human folly and short-sightedness toward war, as the author states in the preface that he dedicated this story to his good friend, Leon Wirth, a Jewish journalist 22 years his senior, who was the target of oppression by the Nazis during World War II when he wrote the book. It is a masterpiece that revives the purity of heart buried within ourselves through the interaction of the little prince as he travels the globe, learning the difference between the perspectives of adults and children, loneliness, friendship, and human love. There are four main characters. The little prince, who has traveled to Earth from the small, distant planet B612. The narrator, a pilot who crash-landed in the Sahara Desert due to a plane malfunction. A beautiful rose, the only flower that bloomed on the asteroid B612. The wild fox who teaches the little prince the importance of seeing with the heart. The pilot, who was disappointed by adults who had lost their creativity when he was a child and who had somehow become an adult himself, meets a boy with golden hair when he crash lands in the desert alone and without hope of surviving. In the middle of a solo flight with no mechanics or passengers on board, the pilot of a plane that crash-landed in the Sahara Desert due to engine trouble was faced with a situation in which he would not survive unless he could complete repairs and fly away on his own within a few days. When he was 6 years old, he read a book about old-growth forests and drew a picture of a boa that swallowed an elephant, but the adults saw it as just a picture of a hat, and he gave up his dream of becoming a painter. Even after becoming a pilot and flying around the world, he lived a solitary life, unable to talk to other adults and unable to meet anyone with whom he could truly interact. With only a week's worth of drinking water left and a life-or-death situation, the pilot is prepared to take on the difficult task of repairing the plane's engine alone. That night, a mysterious boy suddenly appears in the desert, far from any human settlement, and asks him to draw a sheep. The startled pilot asked, "What are you doing here?" The pilot asked the boy, who just repeated earnestly, "Please, draw a picture of a sheep," with a serious look in his eyes. Although he thought it was ridiculous even though he was in danger of death, the pilot took a piece of paper and a fountain pen from his pocket and showed the boy a drawing of a boa serpent, which the adults had laughed at as a child, saying, "A picture of a hat is not scary." And the boy said, "No. I don't want an elephant swallowed by a boa. I want a picture of a sheep." He quickly figured it out and had the astonished pilot draw a picture of a sheep again and again, with repeated detailed orders. The pilot, wanting to quickly disassemble the engine and get to work on repairs, finally lost patience and handed over a drawing of just a simple box, saying, "The sheep you want is in here." Then, the expression of this little prince, who had been looking so dour, brightened up and he said, "What I wanted was this picture. Will this sheep eat a lot of grass? I live in a very small place." When the little prince learned that it was a flying machine, he laughed happily and said, "So you fell from the sky, then? From what planet?" The pilot asked, "Are you from another planet?" The little prince became pensive, looked at a picture of a sheep that the pilot had drawn for him, and began to talk about the planet he lived on and how he came to Earth. The little prince lived on B612, a very small asteroid, only the size of a large house, that was discovered by a Turkish astronomer a long time ago. He said that even if he did not keep his sheep on a rope, they could not go far, so it would be enough to use a wooden box as a sheep pen. There are good and bad weeds on the little prince's star, especially the dangerous baobab, which must be exterminated before it grows, or its roots will penetrate and destroy the little star, so the little prince must pull out the baobab shoots every day. The little prince needed a sheep to eat a small tree. But the sheep might even eat the precious flowers without mercy. Then what are rose thorns for? As the pilot examines the malfunction of the plane, he replies, thorns are just mean flowers, they don't do anything for me. The little prince says in frustration, I don't believe that. Flowers are weak, so they protect themselves as best they can. Flowers think that as long as they have thorns, everyone will be afraid of them. The pilot, covered in machine oil, crouched down and said, I was just giving you a perfunctory answer. I'm busy with something important. The little prince turned blue, got angry, and cried, You talk like an adult. You are confusing what is important with what is not. If a sheep eats the only precious flower that blooms on my planet, it will be as if the world suddenly disappeared from me. Doesn't that matter? Shocked, the pilot hugged the little prince and said, I'll draw a muzzle on your sheep. And that flower you love will not be in danger. When the seed of a flower that came to his little planet sprouted, the little prince observed with care that it might be a new species of baobab, and when the stem eventually developed a large bud, she took time to prepare herself, carefully arranging the petals, and after a few days the flower finally bloomed beautifully, in a seamless and elegant outfit. Oh, excuse me. My hair isn't in place yet. The flower intentionally makes a sigh, but the little prince is struck by her beauty and says, How beautiful you are. The flower does not hesitate to say, Isn't that right? I was born with the sun. Can I have my breakfast too? The little prince fidgeted and gave her fresh water as she quietly urged him to do so. The next step was for the flower to become a dar-looker, and she annoyed the little prince by saying that she was not afraid of wild animals that were not supposed to come because of their thorns, or by selfishly asking him to cover her with an impulse because she did not like the wind blowing in. Eventually, the little prince loses faith in his beloved flowers and decides to leave them and leave the planet. As usual, the little prince cleaned the stars by cleaning the soot from the volcano and pulling out the buds of the newly growing baobab, gave the pride of flowers their last water, and was about to cover them with the glass cover when tears welled up in his eyes as he realized the loneliness of parting. Goodbye. The flower was silent, but when the little prince said goodbye once more, she coughed shyly and said, I was a fool. I'm sorry. I love you. Be happy. If you've decided to go, then go now, hurrying her along so that she wouldn't see him cry. When the little prince left his home planet and came to the area of asteroids 325 to 330, he visited the stars to look for work and to broaden his horizons. The first star was inhabited by an old king who wanted to show off his authority. The little prince asks permission to sit with the king and asks him what he reigns over. When the king replied that he ruled over all of the universe, not only his own star but also other planets and fixed stars, the little prince thought of his own little star and wondered how many times a day he would be able to watch the sun set if he had such power. The king is satisfied that he has found a people to follow, but when the little prince, who has nothing better to do, announces his departure, the king hastens to appoint him ambassador so that his dignity will not be compromised. The little prince mutters, grown-ups are weird, and goes to the next star. On the second star lived a man who pretended to be a big shot who wanted to be admired by many. He wears the funny hat in case he gets an ovation someday, but he says no one has walked by here yet. As he was told, the little prince praised him, but could not understand why he enjoyed it, and left the planet muttering, grown-ups are weird after all. On the third star lived a man who was a drunkard. I drink to forget my shame. The little prince asked the man, what are you ashamed of? The drunkard turns away and says, I am ashamed of drinking. And turns away. The little prince, not knowing what to do, mutters, grown-ups are weird, and leaves the planet. On the fourth star, a businessman was doing some hectic calculations, so the little prince asked him, what's 500 million? The businessman replied, it is the number of stars in the sky. I'm the owner. I was the first to come up with it, so it belongs to me. The king is not the owner, he just governs. If I count all the stars correctly, keep a list of them, and deposit them in the bank, I can stay rich. That way, someone else can have the newly found stars, too, right? I was the owner of that planet, so I watered the flowers every day, cleaned the soot from the volcano every week, and tried to be useful to that planet. But this person is not helping the planet. What is wrong with adults? The little prince left the planet. The fifth star was a very small star with a single gas lamp, guarded by a lone lighted person who lit the lamp. The light operators repeatedly light and extinguish the gas lamps as instructed. To the little prince, this seemingly meaningless task seemed like a wonderful job, as lighting the gas lamps brightens the stars like a flower blooming and extinguishing them puts the stars to sleep. However, as the speed of the star's rotation increased, the intervals between flashes became shorter and shorter, and now that they could not rest even for a moment, life was very harsh for the lit people who liked to sleep. As he left the planet, the little prince sighed ruefully. He was the only one who seemed like he could be my friend. I'm sure all the other people look down on him, but he doesn't seem ridiculous to me. I'm sure it's because he works so hard at something other than himself. And best of all, on that too small planet, we could have seen the sunset as many times a day as we wanted. The sixth large star was inhabited by geographers, waiting for explorers with new information to come along. The little prince, expressing interest in the job, is asked by the geographer about his little planet, B612, and tells him about the volcano and the single flower that is blooming. But the geographer replies, "Well, I can't record a flower because it's ephemeral. Because in a geography book you have to record certain things that never change." When the little prince learned that that single flower was a fleeting life that would one day fade away, he was heartbroken that he had left her alone on the planet. When asked where his next destination should be, the geographer suggested visiting Earth. The seventh planet, Earth, was larger than any planet he had ever seen, and it was a magnificent world with more than 100 kings, 7,000 geographers, 900,000 businessmen, 7.5 million drunkards, and 300 million people pretending to be big shots, in other words, 2 billion adults. The little prince lands in the desert of deserted Africa and encounters an unusual animal, a snake as slender as a finger. The snake says that he has the power to take humans far away and suggests that he will help the little prince if he ever wants to return to his home planet. The little prince continues to walk through the desert, climbing high mountains, looking for people and calling out, "Hello," but no matter how much he speaks, only the echoes echo back to him in parrots. What a strange planet. The flower on my planet always start talking before I do. The little prince walks from the desert through the rocks and snow, and on the way to the village, he finds a garden with many roses that look just like the ones on his planet. He weeps, disappointed that he thought there was only one of that flower in the world, and that it was actually just a common flower called rose. Then a fox appeared in front of the little prince. The little prince was in a sad mood and asked the fox to play with him, but the fox said, "I can't play with you because I haven't become attached to you yet. To me, you are no different from any other boy anywhere. To you, I am no different than any other fox. I don't need to be there. But if you were to befriend me, we would be indispensable to each other. We will be the only foxes in the world. To be attached is to form a bond." When the little prince realized that the flower that bloomed on his planet may have been his one and only, the fox said, "If you, with your golden hair, could make me feel at home, every time I see the golden wheat fields beyond the nondescript, I will remember the sound of your approaching footsteps and love the sound of the wind shaking the wheat. Please, please make me happy." The little prince said, "I wish I could do the same, but I don't have much time. There are so many things I need to know." The fox replied, "Humans have too little time to know anything. We have no friends because we only buy products that have already been made, and there are no stores that sell friends. You have to be patient if you want them to become attached to you. If you are patient, they will sit closer to you, even if they are far away from you at first. Eventually, as the days passed and the little prince came to see the fox, he befriended the fox and they became friends. But when the little prince learned that his departure was imminent, the fox was sad, and his sadness brought a new value to the little prince as a bond of friendship. The fox said, "Go once more to the garden of flowers to see the roses. You will see that your star rose is the only one in the world." The little prince visited that garden once more, looked at the many roses in bloom, and said, "Hey, you guys don't look at all like my star rose. You are like the fox I met when I first met him. You are beautiful, but I can't die for you. The only rose I have watered and covered with glass every day are that rose." Then he returned to where the fox was and said goodbye to him. The fox taught him, you have to see things with your heart to see them properly. The most important thing is invisible. The little prince repeated these words so that he would never forget them. I am responsible for that rose. I am forever responsible for what I have bonded with, he said, and continued walking through the desert once again. The pilot, who has drunk all the water and still hasn't finished repairing the plane after a week, laments, "Soon I will die of thirst." The little prince says, "Even if I will die soon, it is nice to know that I had a friend. I am so happy to have made friends with a fox." The little prince then begins to walk with the discouraged pilot in search of a well in the desert, where there is no hope of finding it. After walking for hours in silence, night fell and the little prince looked up at the night sky and said, "The stars are beautiful because somewhere there is a flower blooming that I cannot see from here. The desert is beautiful because somewhere there is a single well hidden away. Maybe water is good for the soul." The pilot nodded and said, "The invisible things make the stars and deserts beautiful, don't they?" To which the little prince rejoiced, "I'm glad you think like my fox." They continued walking through the desert, and at dawn they found a well. They moved the well's pulley and pulled up a tub, and the water they sipped was soothing. The little prince laughed and said, "People of the earth plant 5,000 roses in one garden, but they never find what they are looking for. But maybe it's in just one flower or a little bit of water. But you can't see it with your eyes, so you have to look for it with your heart," he said to the pilot. "Tomorrow will be exactly 1 year since I fell to earth, and you have to go back to the machine because you have work to do. I'll be waiting for you here, so come back tomorrow evening." The next evening, when the pilot returns to the well after safely repairing the plane, he hears the little prince talking. "Yours is a good poison, isn't it? It won't make me suffer, will it?" As the pilot approached, he could already see a deadly yellow snake dive into the sand and disappear. The pilot rushes over and takes the little prince in his arms as he is about to breathe his last, and the little prince murmurs, "You found out what was wrong with the machine. Now you can go home. I'm glad. I'm going back to the stars, too. But it's so hard and so far away. What is important is invisible to the eye. If you love a flower blooming on a star somewhere, you will feel relaxed when you look up at the night sky. It looks like there is a flower blooming on every star. See, it's the same with the water you gave me to drink. Look at the stars at night. My stars are too small, but thanks to them, you will see all the stars in the night sky as your friends. Everyone has their own stars. I am smiling at any one of the stars in the night sky you look up at, so that means all the stars are smiling at you. I give you the night sky of laughter." The little prince laughed happily, stood up, cried quietly to himself, and began to walk hesitantly. Then, as if a yellow light flashed around his ankles, he fell slowly onto the desert sand without making a single sound. 6 years later, the pilot is still concerned that he forgot to draw the leather strap that attaches to the sheep's muzzle on the picture of the sheep that he drew and gave to the little prince. Perhaps that sheep has eaten the flowers. Since the little prince is a prince, he must have put a glass cover over the flowers to protect them every day. But if he accidentally forgets to put the glass covering on just once, if the sheep escapes in the middle of the night, then all of the starry sky would be lost in tears. I bet the adults have no idea how important that is. The pilot then hoped that if any readers had encountered the little prince while traveling in the African desert, they would write to let him know that he had returned. To Leon Belt. Forgive me, children, for offering this book to an adult. I would like to dedicate this book to a person who was once a child. Even adults were children in the beginning. But few of us have lived our lives without forgetting that.